Okay, and it's begun recording. It's a part two session with Ron Branstner. The Great Steal has occurred, and we're thinking all kinds of forbidden thoughts, and we're using all kinds of forbidden words. Isn't it interesting that our words are more triggering than people actually setting things on fire and throwing bricks? Democrats don't condemn real violence, but words are triggering. But Ron, when we left off in part one, you were telling us a little bit about the Paris Climate Accords and what we can look forward to in terms of this refugee resettlement program. And is there anything else on that, or do you want to get back to Mockingbird Media and Minnesota Public Radio? Or
we could go off in any different direction you want, but I just wanted to mention a little bit about the refugee resettlement program, if I may. There, I communicate with the refugees a lot on a daily basis, and they tell me exactly what's going on. They say about 60% of the men in Minnesota are going back to Somalia to find employment or whatnot. They're leaving their families behind. They'll tell me that. And because the families here are getting a lucrative income and they're sending their monies back over to him, their culture isn't about a mother-father relationship in the family. The cultures are purely about the mother raising the children. The fathers will go over there, have multiple families. The United States, our programs will basically support them, and they'll just continue to re-up this program as long as their religion accepts this polygamy. Polygamy was outlawed in the 1700s. It was 1789. Polygamy was outlawed in the United States, but for some odd reason, this particular culture of people that come here are being able to subvert the laws and being able to have their religion oversee our constitutional rights. I mean, we're seeing that in every aspect of it. We see in Ilhan Omar. I mean, she's
married her brother.
Married her brother. I mean,
While she was married to another man, and nobody's ever looked into the financing with her new husband and his company. She's paying hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign funds to her new husband, the guy who had been her lover here in Minnesota. And, Omar isn't her real name, and her father is a interesting Marxist character with a lot of training. And then we don't really know where Ilhan Omar lived. And it's just a real mess. Project Veritas did some great work last summer that was all but ignored in terms of the election selection and the shenanigans that are going on in Minneapolis. So also we're guilty of
harvest voting. She was
right, buying ballots and $200, $300 per ballot, and all these same persons registered to vote out of the same address in one home. And it is truly an unrecognizable state to me at this point. It does not look like Minnesota right now. When we have
how is it that a person who has an education level before she came here of less than a third grade education comes to the United States, gets free education in I believe it was North Dakota. She then comes back here, and she's now a congressperson wielding the wand of being able to do an impeachment on the most powerful man in the country. You explain that to me, how somebody could have that kind of power, and we give that person that kind of power to where they can control the Congress. There's something so nefarious here.
The third federal agency that she was lying to is on her family financial aid statements at North Dakota State University when she and also with the IRS when she applied for federal financial aid as a student. But with she shows like she's married to two different men at the same time on IRS documents as well. So it doesn't make any sense, and I don't understand what a cultural marriage to your brother is supposed to look like. It's a cultural marriage. Okay, nothing to see here. It's a cultural. Well, anyway, that's all been documented and it's all been run into the ground. And at this point, the very fact that, like you say, how can that happen? And nobody tracks it. There isn't a problem. You know, Drazkowski has tried to do some stuff here in Minnesota, but apart from Drazkowski, nobody's giving Ilhan Omar, nobody's giving her any real pushback or opposition. You don't see Emmer stepping up. Emmer's glad handing with the Council on American Islamic Relations, and then you see all these. I'm wondering a little bit about my own congressman, Jim Hagedorn, at the moment, and we're not seeing a lot of leadership from the Republican side. I think that's where this conversation started out. We were talking about the Republicans not giving any pushback, and they sure dropped the ball yesterday in Washington, D.C. So
They
where do we
did.
go
After
from
they
here?
dropped the ball, the Democrats actually escalated. They pushed them into a corner. I mean, and it's like the Constitution always has checks and balances. They had the freedoms to be able to follow the Constitution at will, and they ignored the Constitution. Our politicians walked away from 80 million people who supported Donald Trump. And then you've got a woman who is from another country, elected here, trying for an impeachment, and then and she has more power than the president of the United States, and she doesn't get banned from Twitter or Facebook. Um, I think we got a double standard there. Now we can bitch until we're blue in the face. The mere
Right.
fact that this program and this refugee program and this Paris Climate Agreement, and a lot of people don't want to get into it. It's too big for them. The Paris Climate Agreement is something that they have to learn outside the scope of the Constitution. Well, you better understand something. The Paris Climate Agreement and the Cairo Declaration, the United Nations Universal Rights on Human Rights is all part of this. So if you don't understand any of that, then you're just left out in the cold because they're controlling you through United Nations 1948 Human Rights Commission, controlling you through the Cairo Declaration, and everything's bypassing and doing an end run on the Constitution. And
Ron,
if you don't want to learn the Paris Climate Agreement, then shame on you because that's exactly what's happening here. You're being taken over by 185 different countries.
Ron,
Period.
for the simple folks here in town who don't like even Republicans, we mentioned Dave Senjum before. His district suddenly had a road diet, and they were going to close a 4-lane road down to a 2-lane road and put in bicycle paths and all this. The people in that street at that moment, a lot of baby boomers, suddenly got interested in politics, and they showed up en masse to city council meetings, and they had a clever thing: no road diet. They didn't want a road diet, so they took this one little issue and turned it into a short-lived movement for one cause, which was to stop Mayor Norton from narrowing the streets, to stop the city of Rochester. It wasn't really at that time. It wasn't really Norton, I think, but they're stopping the implementation of a Green Steps program that they don't really see that it's the Paris Climate Agreement behind the road diet. They're just like, all they know is, hey, I'm being inconvenienced by the city deciding to shut down this street and make it harder for us to drive through. But that's the idea. They want to make it hard for you to use a vehicle. They want you on public transit. The future, that's not going away. The baby boomers may have stopped it for 10 years, 20 years, but when the baby boomers are gone on that street, it's going to come back. And Dave Senjum doesn't probably even himself understand that. Well, you know what? I think he gets it now because Michael Bloomberg spent a lot of money trying to get Senator Dave Senjum out of office this year. A lot, like we're talking $200,000 against Senjum and $200,000 against Senator Carla Nelson, and they won by the squeakiest of margins. So they can read the writing on the wall, and they both have other things to do anyway. But they'll serve this next term, and I believe that they'll both be losing the next time around, unless they recast themselves as Democrats again. and try to
Mm-hmm.
appeal to that party even further by bowing even lower. But this road diet thing, nobody makes the connection. Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
Right. Yeah. But nobody makes the connection. So I just wanted to talk about that so that people could see that these things are impactful. It's in your children's education, in the public schools. It's in what's happening with the parks. It's in what's happening with your roads and your streets and your bridges and your dam projects and your water projects. And it touches every aspect of your life. And
Right.
preventing you from hearing your president speak about globalism and globalists. He was exposing these things. He walked away from the Paris Climate Accord, and the rest of the world was seeing the wisdom of that too. But again, I've gone on too long. But I just wanted to bring that home to viewers that this stuff touches your everyday life, whether you know it or not. So
Yeah, you brought up some names like Michael Bloomberg. Well, he partnered with Mankind Moon on the Paris Climate Agreement. So, um, with the um, with the COVID-19 and the shutting down of businesses, so you can look up Mankind Moon and Mayor Mayor Bloomberg partnering up to do a total shutdown of businesses in parts of the in the United States. So, which which is part of the Paris Climate Agreement. The Paris Climate Agreement is extremely difficult. I understand it through and through. I don't expect anybody to go in and read this stuff verbatim, but to understand that our politicians have sold their soul to the devil. And when I say to the devil, I mean to the world globalist. And we know that with Dave Kleiss. We know that with Mayor Norton and Mayor Brady of Rochester. I know that with the mayor, ex-mayor, and the current mayor of Wilmer, Minnesota, and Betsy Hodges, and so on and so forth. They've all sold themselves out. And I've got this in writing that they are part of the globalist movement. I mean, you look up, as I stated earlier, the Mayor's Assembly. Look that up under Tim Walz and Mark Dayton, not getting out of the Paris Climate Agreement. People
well,
don't
we haven't
understand.
even
Uh,
we didn't even mention the Council of Europe, which of course monitors our speech and our thoughts and our facial expressions to make sure that to measure our levels of implicit bias and our levels of white privilege and whatnot. That they're going to be interviewing city officials and employees and elected people to see what their levels of implicit bias are. They'll be carefully trained professional from the Council of Europe implementing this. That's all. That's all
yeah,
part of this. So
I know
it's
we've
a
talked about the
Krista
Council of Europe.
Hollingshead, who was our city administrator, and she led a session in the Rochester Public Library on how these people are going to be supervising our words and our thoughts and our feelings to determine, animus and whatnot. It's astonishing that human beings, especially Americans, are tolerant to such a degree that they tolerate that sort of crazy science fiction stuff,
Well, you think
right?
about it, they're tolerant because they're told what to do and they do it. They tell you to wear a mask and you do it. What's your constitutional right? No, I don't have to wear a mask. They tell you that these streets are too wide for cars that are too big, and they close it, and you follow it, you do it. They say you need to pay for trails from this point to this point. You follow it, and you pay for it because they say it's a convenience for you. It's a convenience because you won't get sick from COVID-19, which is not a pandemic. It's a flu or it's a cold. But my point is we're conditioned to follow what the leaders tell us to do, and it's a
Right.
shame because the Constitution is on your side, and we, in my lifetime, I have never seen a more destruction in one day of the United States Constitution than I saw yesterday. And I study the Constitution. I have never seen in my lifetime, and I don't think we're ever going to see it, a total disregard of people's rights yesterday. The right to assemble, the right to free speech under Twitter with Donald Trump, the right to petition your own government when these
For
guys are
redress of
supposed to,
wrongs.
huh?
For the right to petition your government for redress of wrongs.
Yeah, and they all stood down because anarchists came in, and what you know. So my point is, yesterday our first right amendment was completely shut off. It was taken away from you because we don't have that right anymore to petition your government. We elected these people to uphold. Do you know uphold the Constitution? Do you know when a person votes for a representative, they're voting for the rule of law for a constitutional republic to uphold the rule of law, and when that representative does not adhere to the rule of law and the Constitution, well, then we turn into an anarchy. We turn into a monarchy. We turn into anything but a constitutional country. So yesterday will go down as probably the most destructive day in 244 years, I believe it is, in the United States history of the United States, and it was led by uh,
A handful
anarchists.
of anarchists who were permitted to enter in, create chaos. A group of anarchists, I believe, will be learning more about their identities soon. And we're told that the one who's wearing that Viking hairy helmet is related to Nancy Pelosi by marriage. The story going around right now is he's married to Nancy Pelosi's daughter and an actor. I haven't verified
Yeah,
that
we got
yet.
to verify that. I
I don't want to
don't think
actually.
so.
We're just repeating nonsense at this point. If we follow their lead, that could be another false flag operation to further discredit uh, people on our side. So we gotta step lightly because they put so much false information 72 hours prior to the 6th of January, Patriots Day. So much false information was floating around. We were in it. That's another thing about the Mockingbird media is how effectively they can spread false stories and have everybody believing or not knowing that something just transpired. Just by framing the narrative and the words they use, everything that happened yesterday will be blamed on Trump supporters.
Yes.
Just like the rioting, I heard from some elderly folks recently who have their hearts in the right place. They're old time Minnesotans, and they believe that the Proud Boys caused the fires in Minneapolis and St. Paul last summer. And that is an absolute absurdity to even repeat. They said that it's Trump's group. It's bizarre. The things that they put in circulation so that they have people actually believing this nonsense.
Right.
And that, of course, happened after Kennedy was shot, too. Yeah, you're right. We saw a coup d'etat yesterday. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. This is a greater, more demoralizing tragedy for the Republic than potentially the Vietnam War
Mm-hmm.
and Gulf War Two.
Well, and here's the
This is,
deal. And you want, and if you want to test the waters, because I said what was going to happen yesterday. I knew there was going to be a coup d'état. I knew there was going to be destruction there, and I called it. But if you want to see what's going to happen, watch the Mueller report just disappear. Watch
um,
the Sidney Powell and Giuliani. Does their report even go any farther than it is now? I mean, does that disappear?
it may disappear and they may be unpersoned themselves, and Lynn Wood may vanish and others, and then they'll sweep up, the opposition here and there. And by the way, in 3 months, when sports are opened up again and we've got the NFL or the baseball season to look forward to, they'll roll out a full season of games for the Minnesota Twins so we can watch them lose again, and everybody will forget about it, and then there'll be some bad weather. There'll be some weather fear, and everybody will go back to trying to run as fast as they can on the treadmill. of work and paying taxes, and
Mhm.
they'll forget all about it, Ron. Just like we forgot, it was just 4 months ago the Twin Cities was on fire. Cars
Yep.
were being turned over. 1 month ago, they burned Washington. The that side was overturning vehicles and attacking police cars.
That was peaceful
And
protest, though. That wasn't the
yeah,
Trump.
those are people, and no COVID-19 fear there. No cancel in advance there. No cancel culture down on these leftists.
Yeah.
And we know the groups that were involved. We're trying to get a public statement from Mayor Norton. We're trying to get her to publicly admit which groups she cooperated with in coordinating these peaceful protests last summer, because she spoke at the rally on City Hall where school children were calling for, quote, a new government. Quote, we need a new government, end quote.
Right.
Children on the steps of City Hall. And she spoke at that rally in support of it. For 3 days, she said that these were peaceful protests up until 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. She was still saying they're peaceful. At 3 o'clock, she put the city of Rochester, Minnesota under a curfew. In my lifetime, I've never seen that happen in an American city. In foreign countries, yeah. In third world dictatorships, yeah. I never saw that happen in the United States of America. She did it to us. She never told us why. It would be nice to know what, when the red phone rang and she was told to put Rochester under a curfew, what was the information she had access about that was happening in our city where she had to shut the peaceful protests down that she helped coordinate?
Right.
So she's been asked publicly, and we know that there were some data transmissions in the Rochester public schools that were sent out by the superintendent of public schools, Munoz. When Munoz spoke in support of Black Lives Matter, and then we know one high school was involved in some activities, and then we had demonstrations. We had children in the streets by the hundreds shutting down the streets. I saw a Somali boy on one of their own videos that some of our Patriot friends are monitoring their transmissions, and that shows a Somali boy kicking a Rochester police car and getting the police car to back up. Now, I don't get it, Ron, but like you talked about Ilhan Omar, here you got a Somali kid, and coming from a third world failed state, which, by the way, is peaceful now because of our propping up their government and the remittance program. They're suddenly a big armpit in East
It's
Africa.
peaceful. It's
And
peaceful now, but wait
yeah,
until Biden gets in
and
there.
now,
They're going to make it a war-torn country, and they're going to
yeah,
open up the floodgate again.
exactly. Because at this point in time, their own foreign minister in Somalia is calling for a return of the diaspora. Come home. We need you to build Somalia. He's
Right.
saying, come on back, people. We need you here. We need you to help us build a new Somalia.
Right.
But they're not, they don't want to do that. But here's this kid in the United States of America, 12 time zones away from his homeland. And
He's never seen before, by the way.
which he's probably never seen, or he's been there on vacation, if you know what I mean, right? Because it's such a dangerous place. They vacation in Somalia, or they take the girls over for the FGM treatment. Uh, so here they are here and reviling our system of government and reviling our police and our law enforcement, and talking about how bad they've got it here in Minnesota. So that, I mean, this is what we get.
Right. Well,
Well, Ron,
there's a lot of
what do we do?
speculation right now,
I'm
but there
done
is some
supporting
speculation.
the GOP. I'm really done with Jennifer Carnahan and her whole gang of people, and there'll be other things that will present themselves, other opportunities, and Trump is on Parler now, so I'll be deleting my Twitter account. I don't need it for anything, and I guess that's it, Ron. I mean, what do you think the future holds? Can you sum it up in like 3 or 4 minutes?
Well, it's very simple. We're going to go back into the Paris Climate Agreement because that's where it's all at. And we're going to go back into the remittance program heavily. We're going to see money leaving this country. We're going to see jobs leaving the country, and we're going to see more importation of cheap labor. Um,
And we're going to see more farm boys expected to sign up and be patriots and bleed out in the sands of foreign countries defending somebody else's border, right? We're
Pretty
going to see
much. I
more
mean,
American boys taken off the farms and sent over to Pakistan or Afghan or wherever they create the next conflict.
you know,
It,
that's interesting because Trump was bringing everybody home from those
yeah,
conflicts. Conflict. Well, let's just see how many wars that are started under the Democrat Party. If I may, I'm just going to before I end this session here, I want you to look at the conflict of the Confederates and against the Yankees, where the Southern Democrats caused the deaths of 625,000 men. Then we go to World War One, where we had 11, I think it was 110,000 people, if I remember right, die under Woodrow Wilson's
mostly
Democratic
men.
leadership. We look under World War II, under Roosevelt's Democrat leadership, and how many people died. Let's look at Korea under Democrat leadership of Truman. And let's look under the Vietnam War under the Democrat leadership of Kennedy and Johnson. You look at all those, and then you look under the leadership since 1968 of 60 million babies that have died under the Democratic leadership of the Democrat Party. And you talk about a Holocaust. Well, let me tell you something. We've had a Holocaust under the Democrat Party, and it's continuing. And until the people decide to rise up, we're gonna be just another statistic under another Holocaust under the Democrat Party, because they have killed more people since the inception of the United States. And until people start learning their history, that the Democrat Party is nothing but a euthanasia and the killing of our young men in America. And we need to wake up, because it's here. It's far worse now because it's in their face, and they've outed who they are now. And until we rise up, and I'm not even sure if we can rise up, because the media is not going to let us, and nor is our
After all the
politicians.
And
Uh,
after all, the best men, the heroes and the patriots are sacrificed on the altar of the Democrat Party. And after all of the men that we've lost in all these wars, when you think of how now they've got boys taking hormone blockers and cutting off their genitals, and that's totally fine. You know, to undo masculinity, right? To do away with gender in the name of freedom, right? Or their Democrat ideals. They have to destroy the family. They don't want to have words like mother and father, sister, brother. Nothing can identify gender. We won't be able to rise up unless we recognize the many ways, the multifaceted ways that those people destroy our culture and our humanity. You mentioned abortion there. That's a Holocaust right there. And I just had to put in that point about what they're doing to the kids.
yep,
And
yep.
that's, it's all part of
Well,
it too.
we could go into 15 different avenues, but until people start raising up against the United Nations, and here's the deal. I know. I'm going to make this pretty clear. We can stop it at the local level, and so we could actually stop this barrage of these programs, stopping it at the local level. We're actually doing this up in the Little Falls area, where we're talking to townships, because the leaders of the townships don't want this to come in. So we created a comprehensive blueprint that we're implementing, and we've got about I think 30 townships now that are on board, willing to make sure that Waltz and these regional governments don't step in. So we need this to go on in the Rochester area. So we need some patriots to get out there, and we'll teach you, we'll educate you, and then we need you to go hit your townships. But you could actually stop this from progressing, but we need your help.
Very encouraging, Ron. And thanks for coming along today and helping us learn that we've got to get involved and in alternative ways, of course, to just being cannon fodder for the GOP. Thank you very much, Ron, and
Yep.
bye. Okay. Thank you,
Happy New
sir.
Year. Yep, thank
Happy
you.
New Year. Blessed New Year to you too.
Bye.